Why don't we all read this together, the pledge Major General Lafayette took with General George Washington as his witness. I, the Marquis de Lafayette, Major General in the Continental Army, do acknowledge the United States of America to be free, independent, and sovereign states, and declare that the people thereof owe no allegiance or obedience to George III, King of Great Britain, and I renounce, refute, and abjure any allegiance or obedience to him. I do swear that I will, to the utmost of my power, support, maintain, and defend the said United States against the said King George III, his heirs and successors, and his or their abettors, assistants, and adherents, and will serve the said United States in the office of Major General, which I now hold with fidelity, according to the best of my skill and understanding. Marquis de Lafayette.
To Laurent Daroux, one of the most talented artists this gallery in 34 years has had the pleasure to work with. He flew in yesterday and he is here right now. Laurent was born and raised in Paris. He received his Master's of Painting from the National Superior Decorative Art School in Paris and his formal training from the National Fine Art School in Lyon. Laurent came to the United States in 2004 and he now lives and works in Florida and California. Among his many collectors are Sir Richard Branson. And now I would like to unveil three of his key pieces.
Oh, wow.
For coming here. For me, it's a special event because you know, I was not really. First of all, I was raised really close to the house where Marquis de Lafayette was born, and I visited like a long time ago, and I never thought I would be, you know, celebrating any kind of event in the United States when I visited his house. I think, you know, it's a beautiful symbol that the boat is coming to the United States. So thank you so much.
Jim came to a group of us and said, you know, we have to do more on July 4th. There really isn't enough activity in Lower Manhattan on July 4th. And he was insistent. And he got a group of us together, and we had a July 4th committee as a result of Jim. And we had activities last July 4th. But then Jim said, let's do more. Let's create an actual organization, a Lower Manhattan Historical Society, and do events year-round. And it's because of him also that we are all here tonight.
The purpose of the Lower Manhattan Historical Society basically is to educate people here in Lower Manhattan and elsewhere about what I believe and what we believe is probably one of the most historically important area of the United States, if not the world, which is Lower Manhattan. So in my view, the purpose of the Lower Manhattan Historical Society and this kind of activity is really to heighten people's awareness of the great historical importance of Lower Manhattan and New York City, and particularly relating to the American Revolution. So when we heard about the Hermione coming here, which was a project that I guess I knew had been building for years, and it was a tremendous investment by the French people and government, and that it was going to be docking here from July 1st to July 4th, it was like manna from heaven to us. It's really very important event, and we hope it will be a very important event. And I can't urge you enough to support, or we support it, and urge you all to come out and see.
Doug is one of the greatest achievements of the Lower Manhattan Historical Society. The amount of effort he has made on behalf of the society is tremendous, more than you could realize, and we can't thank him enough. Thank you. We have a very special guest who's going to tell us why we should be all so enthusiastic and happy about what the French did for us. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Thomas Fleming, who is a most distinguished historian. He is the author of more than 20 books on the American Revolution. He is a frequent guest on C-SPAN, PBS, A&E, and the History Channel. He has recently published a book about Yorktown, to speak about the role of the French in the Battle of Yorktown, which in effect was the culmination on the victory for the Americans.
Well, this is a real honor and a great pleasure to try to bring you into a historical understanding of Hermione and Lafayette's importance when they arrived in April of 1780. He had sensational news from Paris. The French were sending a large army commanded by one of their best generals, the Comte de Rochambeau, and a fleet to help the Americans win the war. It was the first good news the Americans had received in the year 1780, which had been an unmitigated disaster so far. They had suffered ruinous defeats, and General Washington feared that the revolution was on the brink of collapse. But Rochambeau, wisely, he was a very good general, refused to act until he had more men and a bigger fleet. Meanwhile, the British Southern Army, led by Charles Lord Cornwallis, had invaded Virginia and wreaked unbelievable havoc. Out of this tangle of antagonisms and desperate gambles emerged the most unlikely victory of the war. Although France ignored Lafayette's pleas and declined to send General Rochambeau more men or ships, their Secretary of the Navy ordered Admiral de Grasse, the commander of their West Indian fleet, to aid the Americans if he saw an opportunity. When Rochambeau learned this, he wrote to the Admiral, urging him to come as soon as possible, bringing with him as many soldiers as he could borrow from the French West Indies, and money. That was increasingly short supply. Rochambeau described Cornwallis's retreat to Yorktown, making it clear that de Grasse's fleet would be crucial if they hoped to trap him there. General Rochambeau then proposed a march to Virginia. Washington was extremely skeptical and discovered Cornwallis and his army were planning to spend the winter there. This was important news, which Lafayette rushed to Washington. It convinced him that a march to Virginia made sense. So the great gamble began. Admiral de Grasse sailed north with his fleet, stopping to scoop up 3,000 soldiers from the French West Indies and a great deal of money from bankers in Cuba. The admiral arrived first. Then came Washington and Rochambeau and their men to begin a siege on the land side. Perhaps at this point we might mention the least known fact about Yorktown, the numbers. If we count the sailors in the French fleet, there were 29,000 Frenchmen at this climactic struggle and 12,000 Americans. The Marquis de Lafayette played a crucial role in the final attack. His Americans captured one key redoubt while French troops captured another one. The Allies soon had cannon in the two redoubts, enabling them to fire directly into the rest of the British defense line. Cornwallis decided it was time to surrender. As the British and German infantry marched out to lay down their guns, the Marquis de Lafayette had one more moment of personal pleasure, which he never forgot. He noticed as the enemy troops marched past that they had their heads turned to the left, toward the French army. They were trying to pretend that the hated American rebels didn't exist. Lafayette snapped an order to his fifers and drummers. With a crash, they burst into Yankee Doodle. Every enemy head snapped to the right, and they gazed into the smiling faces of the men for whom victory meant liberty and the pursuit of happiness. No one was smiling with more satisfaction than Lafayette. In a few weeks, the news of Yorktown reached London, where Prime Minister Lord North added memorable final words. "Oh God," he said, pacing up and down. "Oh God, it's all over. It's all over." Thanks, all.
Thank you. When it comes to real leadership in Lower Manhattan, no one better exemplifies it than the chair of Community Board Number 1, Catherine Hughes. And Catherine, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
I remember James Kaplan coming to Community Board 1 meetings regularly and persistently for over a year now, reminding us about the importance of embracing and celebrating Lower Manhattan. We're thrilled that the Hermione will be staying downtown for this July 4th. Tonight's art exhibit is timely and is just, I want to thank Doug Smith of the World Trade Center Gallery for hosting this special event, and for the Howard Hughes Corporation for being a sponsor of tonight's event. I want to thank, obviously, the Friends of the Hermione Lafayette in America, because it would not have been possible without you. Thank you so much.
Captain Jonathan Blair, his official title is Acting President of the
No,
South.
he got the official.
Well, I was going to say he certainly is not acting. He's the real deal, and he's the kind of leadership that the museum needs. And please come up and say a few words and tell us what happened today.
Where I'm the executive director of South Street Seaport Museum, and a couple of quick things by way of background. First of all, my background, captain, because I was captain of sailing ships, much like Hermione, very, very similar sort of size. This is a way of interacting with history, and in this case, history that is profoundly relevant to the United States and to Lower Manhattan specifically. This is a real opportunity, a real privilege to have this ship visit us. We've worked very hard to make this happen at the Seaport Museum, and the Seaport Museum's been around since the late 60s, and there's always been a visiting ship program on the piers around the Seaport Museum. Hermione is the most recent and one of the highest profile of these, and we're really thrilled to have her. Things like Hermione and the art that we have the privilege to look at this evening, real, and it is why we are here. So it's been our privilege to work in partnership in bringing Hermione here. We're privileged to be here this evening. I do invite you to come and visit us at the Seaport Museum. That we have moved forward a $10.6 million city-funded restoration project on our 1885 ship Wavertree. A ship.
The other thing that will happen tonight is that we feel we've reached the level of maturity and credibility which would groups reach a certain point, they give out awards. For the first time tonight, the Lower Manhattan Historical Society is going to give out an award, which we are calling the Hero of History Award, to someone in this room. First, I'd like to introduce Wesley Oler, who is one of the co-founders of the Lower Manhattan Historical Society and one of the most energetic, dedicated members. Now, let's hear from Wesley Oler.
Thank you very much, Arthur, and welcome, and very happy and thrilled to be here tonight for the Lower Manhattan Historical Society and with Arthur and Jim and the others who have made this a reality. But my job tonight here is to introduce Miles Young, and before he has a chance to give us some of his wisdom and remarks, we have this award for him. This is the first award given by the Lower Manhattan Historical Society, and it's the Hero of History Award, presented to Miles Young, President, Friends of Hermione Lafayette in America, Inc., who, in the spirit that has motivated patriots throughout American history and in New York City, for your distinguished leadership making history come alive in our time, spearheading the effort that will bring the replica of the Marquis de Lafayette's frigate, Hermione, to America and Lower Manhattan, July 2015. Wow. And it's signed James Kaplan, who is our president. My goodness, how fantastic that is. And what a pleasure it is for Judy and I to be here. Thanks to all of you who've organized this amazing evening. You know, the Hermione, the new Hermione, has been built in the southwestern French port of Rochefort over a period of some 20 years. It was an urban regeneration project, actually. It was an attempt to bring a town that suffered from heavy unemployment and to bring visitors
into the place. The original Hermione was actually present at the blockade of Chesapeake Bay and witnessed the fall of Yorktown, which we have just heard evoked in such a brilliant way here. But it set off the idea of the City Fathers of Rochefort, why don't we reconstruct it from scratch? And at a very early point, the decision was made to make this reconstruction completely authentic. So, many tall ships, as Jonathan will tell you, look authentic on the surface, but underneath, steel, metal, etc., etc., etc. The minimum possible concessions to safety have been made here, but otherwise it is really authentic. But this is an amazing exercise in reconstruction that is a huge gesture of public history. And I think that when the Hermione comes here on July the 1st, it will so beautifully complement your own mission for reviving and encouraging an interest in history in Lower Manhattan. And it will remind us all of the value of heritage, that it's not something that just belongs to the past, but it is living and powerful. Nothing could be more living or more powerful than the heritage that relates to the man who, in a sense, was the human cargo of Hermione when she sailed here in the spring of 1780. He had a very useful family motto. It was, why not? In Latin, cur no. Why not? And that spirit imbues the whole of this project. Why not rebuild an 18th century frigate, completely authentically, and sell it across the Atlantic? Why not, as a boy of 19, imagine that you can come to America and create American independence? Why not believe that you can go back and persuade the king and the royal government to come in on the side of the insurgents? So there's a message about this project which I think is very important, and it's one that we want to encourage amongst young people, and nothing could be more important than this visit to New York. We are so grateful that we can come to the South Street Seaport. The amount of effort which has gone into making it ready for us and available for us has been huge. We are proud to be in South Manhattan. We hope that we can bring some lively, energetic, enthusiastic spirit, evoking the philosophy of why not to this part of the world's greatest island and the world's greatest city at a time of national commemoration in early July this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On July 1st, there will obviously be the coming of the Hermione, the opening ceremony. But we're also planning on July 3rd that we would have a parade from the South Street Seaport to Bowling Green, where we will raise the 13-star flag, which I call the Evacuation Day flag. For those of you who don't know what Evacuation Day was, it was the day on November 25th, 1783, when George Washington finally took control of the city. And he was very careful to make sure that the American flag was flying, the Betsy Ross flag, the same flag we were talking about. And the British actually greased the pole, a soldier named John Van Arsdale climbed up. And for 120 years thereafter, there would be a major, Evacuation Day was a major holiday here in New York. And they would always raise that flag at Bowling Green. Well, reinstituted it last November 25th. And we're going to raise, and it's our intent to carry that flag, which was given to which the Friends of the Hermione graciously accepted to accept. So that very flag is being carried by the Hermione from France.
Along with the French flag.
Along with the French flag. And we're going to have a ceremony whereby that very flag and a French flag will be raised for the first time at Bowling Green on July 3rd. And that, I think, is very symbolic. I might also point out that it was that very flag, not the same, a replica of that flag, that was raised by the Marquis de Lafayette at the first Bastille Day, which was something called the Fête de Fédération. And it was John Paul Jones and Thomas Paine presented it in front of 300,000 people at the Champ de Mars at what was the height of Lafayette's power. So I want to thank you for being here.
Howard Hughes Corporation and the Stout Street Seaport are one of those two rare companies that shows a real interest in this community, and we're very thankful. They readily wrote a check to sponsor this evening and this exhibit, and are fully supporting the Hermione coming to the South Street Seaport.